For decades, Pamela Anderson was the ultimate symbol of Hollywood glamour, the blonde bombshell who ruled television screens and magazine covers alike. From Baywatch to Playboy, she became an icon of beauty, fame, and controversy. But what has happened to her since those wild, glittering days will leave you speechless. At 58, Pamela Anderson looks nothing like the woman the world once knew, and that's exactly how she wants it. Gone are the red swimsuits, the dramatic makeup, and the flashing paparazzi lights. What remains is a woman who has finally found peace, and who's not afraid to show the world her real face. When she stepped onto the red carpet in 2023 with no makeup, no stylist, and no fear, the internet erupted. Some gasped, others cheered, but everyone was talking. Because for the first time, Pamela wasn't trying to play a part. She was just being herself. Behind that transformation lies a story few people know, of heartbreak, courage, and rebirth. She's lived through turbulent marriages, personal loss, financial struggles, and the constant glare of fame. But through it all, she's emerged stronger, softer, and more human than ever before. Pamela Anderson's journey from misunderstood sex symbol to empowered survivor is more than a Hollywood comeback. It's a lesson in rediscovering one's worth. And when you see her now, you'll realize this isn't the end of her story. It's the beginning of her most authentic chapter yet. Before the flashing cameras, the magazine covers, and the legendary red swimsuit, Pamela Anderson was just a shy girl from the small town of Ladysmith, British Columbia. Born in 1967, she grew up surrounded by nature, far removed from the chaos of Hollywood. She wasn't the loudest or the most confident. In fact, she was painfully shy. But even then, there was something about her, a quiet spark that the world would one day recognize. Pamela's childhood was anything but easy. Her family struggled financially, and she often felt like she didn't belong. Behind her bright smile, there was a loneliness she couldn't quite explain. Later, she would reveal that she had endured trauma in her early life, experiences that shaped her resilience but also left deep scars. "I learned to survive early," she once said. "I just didn't know how to heal." Everything changed in 1989 when Pamela attended a football game in Vancouver. During a break in the game, a camera operator zoomed in on her in the crowd wearing a Labatt Blue Beer t-shirt. The stadium erupted. The brand loved her look so much that they hired her as the Blue Zone girl for their national campaign. And just like that, Pamela Anderson's life was never the same. Soon after, Playboy magazine came calling. Pamela hesitated at first. The idea of posing nude terrified her, but she also saw it as a chance to take control of her image, on her terms. Her debut cover in 1989 was an instant sensation. Within months, she became one of Playboy's most popular models, appearing on more covers than any other woman in the magazine's history. Hollywood quickly took notice. Casting directors saw something magnetic, not just her looks, but her charisma. In 1992, she landed the role that would make her an international phenomenon, C.J. Parker on Baywatch. Running down the beach in slow motion, with her blonde hair glistening in the sun, Pamela became the face of a generation. But behind the glamour, she was still the same girl who never quite believed she belonged. The sudden fame was overwhelming. Strangers treated her like a fantasy rather than a person. Paparazzi followed her everywhere, to the grocery store, the gym, even to her home. "It was like living in a fishbowl," she recalled. "Everyone had an opinion about me, but nobody really knew me." Her fame was intoxicating but dangerous. The attention brought opportunities, but also exploitation. The media labeled her a sex symbol, a title that would both define and trap her for decades. Pamela tried to laugh it off, but inside, she felt like she was losing herself. "It's strange when the world tells you who you are before you figure it out for yourself," she later reflected. Then came her highly publicized relationship with rock musician Tommy Lee, a whirlwind of passion, chaos, and scandal. Their marriage, their love, and their heartbreak were played out on television screens and tabloids around the world. The infamous tape that was stolen and leaked turned her into the face of a new kind of celebrity invasion, one that blurred the line between public and private life. Pamela's image was everywhere, but her voice was lost. She became the subject of jokes, late-night monologues, and gossip headlines. What few realized was that beneath the glitz and the noise, she was quietly struggling as a mother, a wife, and a woman trying to hold on to her dignity. She once said in her diary, "Everyone sees me, but no one really looks." Those words captured the truth of her life at the time. She was adored, desired, and idolized, but rarely understood. And yet, even in the middle of the chaos, Pamela never lost her compassion. She threw herself into activism, fighting for animal rights, environmental causes, and humanitarian work. For her, it was a way to find purpose beyond fame, to remind herself that she was more than the world's projection of her. By the late 1990s, Pamela Anderson had become a global icon, a woman who represented both the power and the price of beauty. But fame had taken something from her, her innocence, her peace, and her sense of self. She didn't know it then, but the years ahead would strip away everything, her image, her relationships, her fortune, until all that remained was the woman she truly was. And when the world would see her again decades later, they would gasp, not because of how she looked, but because of how real she had finally become. By the mid-1990s, Pamela Anderson had achieved everything the world told her to want: fame, beauty, success, and adoration. Her face was everywhere, on billboards, TV screens, and the covers of countless magazines. To millions, she was the ultimate fantasy. But to Pamela, it was becoming a trap, one that grew tighter with every passing year. Every interview began the same way. The reporters didn't want to know about her thoughts, her beliefs, or her ambitions. They wanted to know how she kept her body so perfect. They wanted the image, not the woman. Pamela learned to smile through it, to give clever, playful answers, even when her heart wasn't in it. "I became this character," she later said. "I played her so well that I almost forgot who I was." The constant attention came with an unbearable price. Her marriage to Tommy Lee, though passionate, was volatile. They loved hard and fought harder. Their union was a spectacle that fed the tabloids daily, and when their private tape was stolen and spread across the world, Pamela's life turned into a living nightmare. She didn't profit from the tape, she didn't approve it, and she couldn't stop it. The internet was new, and the scandal spread faster than anything before. Overnight, she became the poster child for a new kind of violation, one that blurred the line between fame and exploitation. "It was stolen property," she said years later. "It was two people in love, and it was turned into something dirty." The media mocked her, late-night hosts made jokes, and society blamed her instead of the criminals who leaked it. The woman who once seemed invincible was humiliated, stripped of privacy and dignity. She withdrew from public life, hiding behind the same smile that had made her famous. But behind closed doors, she was falling apart. "I was broken," Pamela admitted. "Everywhere I went, people looked at me differently. I wasn't Pamela the actress anymore. I was Pamela the scandal." She tried to rebuild her life, focusing on her two sons, Brandon and Dylan, and taking roles that allowed her to laugh at herself. But the damage had been done. She couldn't escape the image the world had created. Casting directors saw her as nothing more than the blonde bombshell. Tabloids followed her every move, twisting even her acts of kindness into gossip fodder. Then came another blow: her health. In the early 2000s, Pamela revealed she had contracted hepatitis C, a diagnosis that shook her to the core. She believed it was from sharing a tattoo needle with Tommy. Doctors told her it was serious, possibly fatal. She began treatment, enduring years of pain and exhaustion. "I thought I was dying," she said. "And no one saw that side of me." Still, she refused to give up. Even as the headlines mocked her personal life, Pamela poured her energy into activism. She became a global voice for animal rights, working with PETA and speaking out against cruelty in all forms. For the first time, she found something that wasn't about her body. It was about her heart. But fame is cruel to women who age, especially those who built their careers on beauty. As she entered her 40s, Hollywood began to look past her. The offers slowed down. Younger faces took her place. But instead of chasing the spotlight, Pamela began to step away from it. intentionally. She sold her Malibu home, moved to Vancouver Island, and started living quietly near her parents. It was the first time in her adult life that she could walk outside without being recognized, without judgment. The silence was both comforting and terrifying. For the first time, Pamela confronted the question she had avoided her whole life. Who am I when the world stops looking? Her journals from that period reveal a woman rediscovering herself, not the icon, but the human being. "Perfection is a lie," she wrote. "It took me decades to realize that being seen isn't the same as being loved." When she looked back on her years in the spotlight, Pamela didn't feel anger. She felt compassion. For the young woman who didn't know she could say no. For the mother who was just trying to survive. Gone were the designer clothes, the red carpets, and the stylists. Pamela began gardening, cooking her own meals, and taking long walks by the water. For someone who had lived her life in the spotlight, anonymity was almost spiritual. But silence has a way of forcing the truth to surface. For Pamela, it meant confronting years of trauma she had pushed aside. She began writing again, poetry, journal entries, and letters she would never send. In those private pages, she admitted her deepest pain, how she had spent her life being what everyone else wanted, instead of what she needed to be. "I didn't know how to be still," she wrote. "The attention was my drug, and when it was gone, I felt empty. But that emptiness, it became my teacher." For the first time, Pamela began therapy. She explored the abuse she suffered as a child, experiences she had revealed years earlier but never fully processed. She realized how much those wounds shaped her choices, her need to please, her attraction to chaos, and her constant search for love in people who couldn't give it. "People saw me as this fantasy," she said. "But I was just a girl trying to survive the storm." As she healed, she started saying no to projects that didn't serve her, to relationships that drained her, and to the Hollywood system that had always defined her worth by her looks. She cut ties with toxic influences, sold her Malibu home, and found solace in simplicity. Then came the pandemic, a global pause that forced everyone to slow down. For Pamela, it was a strange blessing. She spent those months in isolation, walking the beach every morning, meditating and feeding stray animals that wandered near her property. It was as if nature herself was helping her rebuild from the inside out. In 2023, when Pamela appeared at Paris Fashion Week, the world gasped, not because of her glamorous outfit, but because she wore no makeup at all. The woman who had once been the face of Hollywood beauty had stripped it all away. The internet exploded with shock and admiration. Fans called her brave, radiant, and real. But for Pamela, it wasn't an act of rebellion. It was simply the truth. "I'm not trying to be the prettiest girl in the room anymore," she told an interviewer. "I just want to be free." That single moment redefined her image more than any photo shoot ever could. Suddenly, she wasn't a symbol of fantasy. She was a symbol of freedom. Her Netflix documentary, Pamela, A Love Story, gave fans a glimpse of the real woman behind the myth. She spoke candidly about her past loves, her heartbreaks, and her regrets, but also about her resilience. Viewers saw her laughing, crying, and dancing alone in her living room, finally comfortable in her own skin. Critics called it a revelation. Fans said they'd never felt closer to her. Through it all, Pamela never blamed anyone. Not the industry, not the media, not even the men who broke her heart. "I chose my life," she said softly, "and I forgive everyone who played a part in it." By the time she turned 58, Pamela Anderson was no longer chasing the image of perfection the world demanded. She had become something far more powerful, authentic. Her hair was silvering, her skin carried the lines of time, and her eyes had that unmistakable glow of peace that only comes from survival. People who saw her now didn't gasp because of beauty in the traditional sense. They gasped because of her transformation. Because she had turned pain into purpose and fame into freedom. Pamela Anderson had fallen apart. But in doing so, she finally came alive again. Today, at 58, Pamela Anderson lives a life that looks nothing like the one the world once imagined for her. Gone are the flashing lights, the paparazzi chases, and the noise of endless fame. In their place is something far rarer: peace, purpose, and self-acceptance. Her mornings begin in silence. She wakes up to the sound of waves brushing the shore outside her home on Vancouver Island, where she now lives full-time. She makes tea, writes in her journal, and tends to her garden. Her dogs follow her everywhere. The woman who was once the most photographed person on Earth now finds joy in growing her own vegetables and watching sunsets over the Pacific. It's a slower life, but one that feels real. After decades of being told who she was, the sex symbol, the scandal, the fantasy, Pamela finally reclaimed her story. When her Netflix documentary Pamela, A Love Story premiered, she didn't hire stylists or media handlers. She sat in her living room, makeup-free, wearing a simple sweater, and watched her past unfold. It was raw. It was painful. But it was hers. For years, Hollywood had painted Pamela as a caricature, the blonde bombshell who lived for attention. What the world saw in the documentary, however, was a woman of depth, humor, and strength, a survivor who had endured public humiliation, betrayal, and heartbreak, and still managed to rise above it. "I spent so much of my life running from my story," she said. "But now I realize it's what made me who I am." Her vulnerability resonated with millions. Women across generations began writing to her, thanking her for showing that beauty doesn't fade with age. It evolves. Young girls who grew up hearing her name for all the wrong reasons now saw her as a symbol of empowerment and grace. Pamela didn't just reclaim her image, she redefined it. Her book of essays and poetry, Love, Pamela, became a bestseller, not because it was sensational, but because it was honest. Each page revealed fragments of her soul, the love she gave too freely, the pain she carried too long, and the peace she finally found. "I used to think love was about losing yourself," she wrote. "Now I know love is what brings you back home. That home is not just her physical space, it's her state of mind." Pamela found beauty not in perfection, but in imperfection. She let her natural hair turn gray, her face rest without makeup, and her body exist without apology. She no longer feels the need to compete with younger versions of herself. She celebrates the woman she's become, and the world has noticed. Fashion houses have invited her back, not as a model, but as a muse. Instead of chasing trends, Pamela now sets them by being authentic in an industry built on illusion. When she walked the red carpet bare-faced in 2023, it wasn't just a style statement, it was a revolution. For millions of women watching, it said, "You don't have to hide to be beautiful." In interviews, Pamela often speaks about forgiveness, not just for others, but for herself. "I forgive the young girl who didn't know better," she says. "I forgive the woman who stayed too long. I forgive the world for misunderstanding me. And I forgive myself for believing I had to be anyone but me." It's that grace that defines her today. Behind the quiet life and gentle smile, Pamela still carries fire, not for fame, but for causes close to her heart. She continues her activism for animal rights, environmental protection, and human kindness. She writes letters to world leaders, raises awareness for ethical living, and uses her platform not to be seen, but to make others feel seen. Friends say she's happier now than she's ever been, not because everything is perfect, but because she finally stopped chasing perfection. "I'm not trying to go back," she says. "I'm finally where I belong." When people see Pamela Anderson today, with her glowing skin, her silver hair, and her calm presence, they gasp. But not for the reasons they once did. It's not shock, it's admiration. It's awe at the woman who survived fame and came out wiser, softer, and stronger. Pamela once embodied the fantasy every man desired. Now, she represents the strength every woman deserves to feel. She is no longer the image they sold. She is the truth they never showed, and that truth, at 58, is more beautiful than anything she ever played on screen.